There are only 3 names left, amazingly, for the 2023 Seattle Mariners. We're going to end with hitters on top of the war pile. I'm guessing you can guess who they are. And based on elimination and, all that good stuff, we can talk about the last pitcher on this list, Mr. George Kirby. But before we talk about Mr. George Kirby, I'm going to talk about Simply Seattle, the very best in Seattle sports gear and awesome stuff for the Mariners, Seahawks, Kraken, Storm, Supersonics, Huskies, Cougars. You can find it all there. Hey, you find it all, you're ready to check out, but no, you are not, because you're going to enter code MOLLYWOP15, MOLLYWHOP15. It automatically takes 15% off your order. It is a great deal from great people. There's a link in the description, but once again, simplyseattle.com and MOLLYWOP15. Thank you so much, Simply Seattle. So George Kirby makes 31 starts for the Mariners, and he has a 3.35 ERA over 190 and 2/3 innings. Gives up 22 homers, a 1.04 whip, which is walks and hits, innings pitched. It's basically just a little bit over 1. 19 walks, 172 strikeouts. I really should have said the walk part last because it's the most impressive, but you can do the numbers. That George Kirby had a very strong 2023 season. I don't think that the stats even quite tell you how much improvement he made in 2023 because, by run prevention, ERA 3.39 compared to 3.35. That is an improvement of 0.004. Not big. Not big at all. But if you watch George Kirby pitch and you watched him in 2022, and I'm not saying George Kirby in 2022 stunk out loud by any stretch of the imagination. I just think you saw a much better and more complete pitcher in 2023, which you should have. That's how this is supposed to go, improvement. But I was really impressed. We joked about the Mariners saying that they took a step forward in 2023 and how frustrating that was. Because the team did not. Individual players did. And George Kirby, I think, was one of those guys. And, you look at his baseball savant page. It's one of my favorite savant pages to look at because I just like seeing those hundreds every once in a while. Those real bright reds. There's some blue here too, and blue is bad in this thing. But you're talking about somebody who was in the 84th percentile in fastball velocity, in the 88th percentile in chase rate, and in the 100th percentile in base on ball percentage. 2.5% of the time, he walked a batter. Elite doesn't even begin to describe it. He has the best control of any starting pitcher in baseball. The numbers back that up. He can throw anything to any part of the plate. And I do mean anything. We'll talk about that in a second. That chase rate is big too, because I think one thing we were looking for George Kirby to be better at in 2023 was being more effectively wild. Patent pending. No patent pending. They've patented it. Very good podcast. But we were looking for that, right? To trust his stuff, to make hitters swing at pitches outside of the strike zone more. And he did. I think one of the things too with chase rate is when you're a batter up there and you're facing George Kirby, he's going to get the benefit of the doubt from umpires. So you have to swing at some pitches that are borderline or just flat out of the strike zone because you don't know. Be curious to see how much that changes when the robot uprising comes. Can't wait. But I do think that is in the back of hitters' minds that if it is outside of the zone by just a little bit, you don't know, and they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, there are some numbers here that tell you that command is going to always be very important for George Kirby. Whiff rate of 22.9% is well below average in the 27th percentile. Hard hit percentage of 40.9, 38th percentile. Strikeout rate of 22.7, 43rd percentile. And if you're wondering why that number is substantially higher than the whiff rate, it's because he gets a lot of called third strikes, obviously. Umpires like him. Umpires like guys who pound the zone. and George Kirby pounds the zone. And those numbers aren't terrible. We're not talking about in the bottom 10th percentile. We're not talking about a Carlos Silva. Hate that I even brought up his name, but guys who are just throwing strikes for the sake of throwing strikes. That's not George Kirby. He'll throw the whole kitchen sink at you. And I do mean the whole kitchen. So, according to Baseball Savant, George Kirby threw 7 different pitches: a four-seam fastball, a sinker, a slider, a curve, a split finger, a changeup, and a knuckleball. Let's get the knuckleball out of the way. It was one of the coolest moments of 2023. It happened in the very last game. Him throwing that knuckleball in honor of Tim Wakefield. That was really cool. That was awesome. It actually looked pretty good too. But okay, probably not going to see a whole lot of knuckleballs from George Kirby going forward. He threw his fastball 1,100 times compared to about 1,500 times for everything else combined. And his fastball was his best pitch by a fairly substantial margin, a run value of 14, 234 average against, whiff rate of 28%. So 7 of 25 fastballs being swung and missed at. Solid. Not great, but solid. Slugging percentage of 392. Very solid. That was his best pitch. By value, his next best pitch was his slider. Got a whiff rate of 22.1% on it. Hitters hit 367 with a 381 slugging, a weighted on base average of 301. It was, I think, his most consistent secondary pitch. His sinker was solid. Like we talked about with Luis Castillo, the sinkers are not usually the pitches that you see large percentage of whiff rate on. 13.4, but he threw it for a lot of strikes. Hitters only slugged 383 against it. It was a solid offering. Curveball was awful. They slugged 452 off it, excuse me. Only a whiff rate of 15.8. Don't know why I can't talk today, but that's okay. But sorry, George, that your video is a mess. And his changeup, he's just got to get rid of it. And I think he will, and we'll talk about why. He only threw it 49 times, but they slugged 900 against it. They only swung and missed less than 10%, 9.1. The reason why I think George Kirby could take that next step forward, I think his splitter has a chance to be something special. So that splitter, 172 times he threw it. Hitters only hit 143 against it. He got 35.7% of hitters to swing and miss at it. 40.8% strikeout. Slug 286. If he's more comfortable with that pitch in 2024, I think that could be massive. I think that could be something that maybe does take him to that next level. Because if I'm being honest with you, I think for the most part, what you see is what you get with George Kirby in terms of his other offerings. His four-seam fastball, his sinker, his slider. They kind of are what they are. I don't see a whole heck of a lot of room for improvement, which is okay. But we're not talking about 80 grade pitches. We're not even talking about 70 grade pitches. We're talking about a lot of 60s with 80 grade control and 70 grade command. Obviously, can be very successful. But if that splitter can become a thing, I really wonder if it is possible for him to take that next step forward. We'll talk about it when we get into previewing 2024, but that's an interesting little development. That is a really interesting development because, he only threw it 9 times in 2022. And if I'm being honest with you, it's possible that those were just identified pitches. It's very possible. That's really intriguing to me, especially because, you're talking about a pitcher that is so in the strike zone. And that splitter, when people are looking for fastballs, man, they can be made to look quite the fool. I'm really intrigued. I'm really intrigued. And I think that was a very positive development. The curveball, change up, I'd probably just scrap them. Fastball, sinker, splitter, a lot of success. And obviously the slider too. George Kirby also, he was consistent, but maybe not quite as consistent as you think. 13 starts where he gave up a run or less. A bunch of starts where he gave up 2 and 3. And then there were some clunkers. There were a bunch of 6-inning, 4-run starts too. Not a bunch, but there were some. And those can work. I'd like to see less of that in 2024. Asking a lot, sure, but high expectations. Because if I'm being honest, and again, I didn't want to talk a whole lot about 2024 now. I want to review 2023. I'm not sure 6-inning, 4 runs is going to be good enough a lot of times in 2024. They are going to be relying on their starting pitching so much, barring a bunch of changes. The starting pitching is going to have to carry them, as it did for most of 2023. And it almost worked. 88 wins. Pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. I wanted to give you a stat to end this video because it's just fascinating to me. I got to pull it up, but it is just, I don't even know what you say to it. So Baseball Savant will give you a lot of splits. They'll give you a bunch of, we've talked about it. We talked about it with Bryce Miller and Brian Wu. It'll break down things about months and teams and a whole bunch of stuff. One of the things it'll also do is tell you how effective a pitcher was against hitters in batting in their order. It gives you the batting first, second, third, all through the ninth, right? This is so weird. And I don't think it tells you a dang thing. It's just, I have to talk about it. So hitters batting first against him had a 662 OPS. Good. Hitters batting second, 674. Good. Hitters batting third hit 167, 211, 250. That's a 461 OPS over 90 plate appearances. Hitters batting fifth, you'll note that I skipped one, 640 OPS. Sixth, 635. Seventh, 436. Eighth, 734. That's kind of weird. Imagine just one couple of eighth guys had some nice days against him, but they had 286, 306, 429, 734. Easily the second highest of these numbers. And hitters batting ninth had no chance. They had a 526 OPS. Hitters who batted fourth in the lineup against George Kirby last year came to the plate 88 times. They hit 412, 432, 741 with 13 extra base hits, 7 of those homers. What? I truly don't know what to say to that number. What does it say? There must have just been some guys. Look, your fourth hitter is often, sometimes it's your best hitter, sometimes it's your second or third best hitter, but it's usually a guy who can hit a baseball real far, right? And those guys hit 412, 432, 741 off of him. Now, I'm curious now what those numbers are in 2022. So here comes another awkward. Okay, this is interesting. In 2022, those hitters, 25 games, 65 plate appearances, only hit 254, 308, 356. That's a 664 OPS. It is not, it's not half. It's not that far from it. But what's interesting is last year he really struggled against batters who were hitting second and third. 995 OPS for hitters batting second, 912 for batters batting third. I don't think these numbers tell you a dang thing, really. But it's just interesting, isn't it? I mean, fourth hitters last year clobbered him, and the year before in his rookie year, he handled him just fine. I don't know. I just had to give you that number. You can make of it what you want. Hell, you tell me what you think those numbers are. Sorry for the swear. Long story short, George Kirby was really good in 2023. I know we all want to talk about the thing, the comments that he made. I didn't talk about him on my video after the game. Sorry, got to get comfortable. I had no problem with him. I love honesty from players. He was honest. He didn't feel like he had the stuff to go get hitters out in the seventh inning of that game. And you know what? He didn't. Do I think that a lot of positivity came from those comments? No, not really. Do I appreciate and find his honesty refreshing? Heck yeah. Because I don't think you can watch George Kirby and question his toughness. I really don't. I get why people were frustrated by it, but I found it refreshing. And I think George Kirby is going to be a big part of the Mariners' success over the next few years. And I do think that there could be a step forward if this splitter can be the type of thing it was in 2023, thrown more often. Be curious to see. Did you find that stat as bizarre as me, by the way? You had to have. And prove it by hitting like and subscribe on this video. I really appreciate the support. There's only 2 people left. You know who they are. Next up is my son. So proud of my son. Talk to you soon.